Oh, speaking of which, here's Gal Gadot. Claims Snow White flopped because the pressure on celebrities to bring up things against Israel rather than her terrible acting. This is discussing film saying this. That's crazy. Rather than her terrible acting. That's wild. Discussing film usually takes like a more neutral tone, but it's funny that like this is the one instance where it's like, nah, it's fuck Israel o'clock, and also Gal Gadot is a terrible actress. You can always try to explain with enough wine to fill the Nile. Khalil, no. You can try to give people in the world a context about what's happening in Israel and what the reality is here, but in the end, people decide for themselves. Khalil, no. Israel, no. Yeah, between the ADL adding America First to their list of anti-Semitic terms, and those pro-Israel advocacy groups are doing everything to prop up anti-Semitic conspiracies. Yeah. In case you missed it, U.S. court ruling formally conflates a political symbol of a state of Israel with the Jewish identity, a conflation that is textbook anti-Semitism, which literally is textbook anti-Semitism within the International Holocaust Remembrance guidelines that even the dude who came up with the guidelines says should never be used to legislate, even though everyone uses it to legislate, regardless of his consistent advocacy against this sort of thing. But of course, when it's in the service of protecting Israel from criticism, this conflation is celebrated. Legal group hails breakthrough as U.S. judge equates Israeli flag with Jewish identity. In the United States of America, it is a First Amendment protected act to burn the American flag. Wait, what the hell? Did I lose my internet? What's happening? It is a First Amendment protected act to burn the American flag, but the Israeli flag now is considered racial discrimination and not political protest, setting legal standard for future cases involving anti-Zionist targeting. Out of curiosity, I mean, look no further than what's going on in fucking New York. What do you mean? New York is a great example of this. New York Jews voted for Zoran. Majority of New York Jews voted for Zoran, okay, in the primary. Look at the media reporting on this issue. You would think Zoran ran on a campaign of exiling every Jew from New York and that New York Jews were talking about fucking escaping New York or some shit. They voted for him. They fucking voted for him. How do you not understand? What is actually going on, and the way the media reports on certain things to craft a specific narrative as a fucking mechanism of attack is entirely different. And no, I don't think a Palestinian Christian figure can actually play a role here against WASP and evangelicals. No, look at the way the Christian, I think it was like the Orthodox Christian Palestinian person like living in Palestine and the Tucker Carlson interview. They're like making fun of her for having like a mustache or something, like having facial hair. They're fucking insane, dude. People are insane. Also, this kind of thing, due to an endless sequence of Red Scare propaganda, is shit like this. The executive director of Israel's National Cyber Directorate was arrested this week in Las Vegas in a child predator ring sting. This guy works directly under Netanyahu, so of course he was allowed to go back to Israel. This post and the video are from his LinkedIn. Yeah, Tom Alexandrovich was the executive director at Israel National Cyber Directorate. The Nevada Internet Crimes Against Children joint operation included detectives and agents from the ICAC Task Force and the FBI's Child Exploitation Task Force, which includes the Metropolitan Police Department, Federal Bureau of Investigation, North Las Vegas, and Henderson Police Departments. Homeland Security investigations in the Nevada Attorney General's office, according to Metro News release. For the record, this is what I was talking about when I said, like, a lot of these departments are still tasked with, like, combating child predation, for example. Okay? This is them doing the thing that they're supposed to do. This is, like, the one function of the police that is a good thing, objectively, that I think no person other than straightforward lunatics would disagree with. right? Those arrested were David Wanacott Yankee, 40, Tom Artyom Alexandrovich, 38, Jose Alberto Perez Torres, 35, Aniket Brajesh Kumar Sadani, 23, James Ramon, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. They all faced felony charges of luring a child with a computer for a sex act and were booked into the Henderson Detention Center with the exception of Duncan, who was booked into the Clark County Detention Center. U.S. detains worker from Israel's top cyber defense agency for questioning. Prime Minister's office says incident resolved quickly, ending with brief questioning of National Cyber Directorate staffer before his release and return to Israel. That's right. Tom Alexandrovich, who is the executive director at Israel's National Cyber Directorate, was subsequently detained and swiftly released after being detained and investigated for trying to lure a child. I mean, what do you say? What do you say about this? What can you say about this? I mean, this is just like, what can you fucking say? Yeah, Felix says the same thing. He says, what can you even say at this point? Here's the full Ynet article. It says he was in Vegas and may have been arrested for his conduct. State and local authorities say these men were caught as a part of a sting and had attempted to lure what they thought were children online. That he was allowed to leave the country is utterly scandalous. Okay? An employee under the Israel National Cyber Directorate operating under Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office was briefly detained for questioning during a professional conference in the United States where he was representing the state, Ynet learned on Wednesday. After his questioning, he returned to his hotel and flew back to Israel 2 days later. Israeli officials downplayed the incident, saying it carried no political implications and was resolved quickly. The reasons for the questioning remain unclear, but may relate to the employee's conduct. They're going to hold a press conference where the cops apologize for arresting him. They're going to give him the Congressional Medal of Honor and also give him several SSDs filled with stuff the FBI confiscated from non-Israeli pedophiles during the ceremony. You say one bad apple doesn't rot the basket. Deflect. To be fair, hear me out. To be fair to Israel, okay? Jeffrey Epstein, not only dead, but also a lot of attention on him. Okay? Someone's got to do it. What are they supposed to do? They've fallen on hard times. Okay? Yeah, they're trying to put the team back together for one last job. To be fair to Israel is something I never thought I would hear Hassan say. Yeah, because I'm a Zionist. Get with the program. Now, when you see stuff like this, and this association with Israel, okay, you understand exactly what's going on. You're like, America literally will treat Israel better than it treats its own citizens, blah, 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 right? The average person doesn't look at this and go, oh, it's because America plays a profoundly important role, or Israel plays a profoundly important role in like American foreign policy. And that's the reason why they've been able to, for the past 80 years, successfully implement a influence peddling operation and also lobbying efforts to implement implement in the minds of many Americans in positions of power, many Americans in general, that like Israel is so important, both from a theological justification for the Christian evangelical Zionists, which is a very important voting bloc in this country, unfortunately, and also anyone else that goes into like institutes of higher learning and learns that like Israel actually is good. Because if you ever talk bad about Israel, that means you're anti-Semitic and you're shut off from the conversation in its entirety. Like, they're not going to think about all that. They're just going to go, Jews are doing this. Okay? That's it. So when America behaves in this way, the American government behaves in this way, they literally are fucking doing, okay, this is Jewish conspiracies, I guess. Like, that's what most people fucking see. That's what most people see when they see this. This is what I'm talking about. When you got the government, when you got the Department of Homeland Security black bagging a green card holder and going Shalom Mahmoud for the crime of reflecting the opinion of the broad majority of Americans that like Israel is doing fucked up things. Most Americans, even racist ones, even Islamophobic ones, are going to look at that and go, what the fuck is happening, bro? It's crazy. It's like the David Duke shit of like ZOG, Zionist Occupied Government, which is like an alt-right terminology, right? This is like neo-Nazi shit, okay? Not like neo-Nazi shit. This is directly neo-Nazi shit. It's the government basically saying, no, you don't understand. We are that. Like, we're doing that. We're doing that. We love that shit, okay? So, of course, people look to the likes of fucking Nick Fuentes in this process and go, well, that guy was right, I guess. Of course. Meanwhile, all of the fucking dumbass, quote-unquote, liberal Zionist institutions are too busy. Israel advocacy organizations are too busy fucking yelling at people like myself, who have actively combated anti-Semitism their entire career and continue to do so to this day. And forms of bigotry across the board. All forms of bigotry, no matter what. That's it. Liberals are more invested in attacking people like myself, people on the left, than they are in combating the fucking fascist movement that is growing. They inevitably end up capitulating that fascist movement that is growing instead of counter-messaging against it. Okay? And then especially when like right-wing attitude and right-wing sentiment is so normalized, yeah, the people that come across as more earnest in that messaging structure are going to end up getting pulled to the fucking top. Okay? But go ahead. If you're a Jewish advocacy organization that is masquerading, or if you're an Israel advocacy organization that's masquerading as a Jewish advocacy organization, or a fucking civil rights movement or something, or a civil rights organization, and you're too predisposed with like yelling at Miss Rachel for saying you shouldn't kill Palestinian children, then you are also actively pushing American society in this direction. Good luck. Have fun with that. And I don't know if it's like deliberate, or I don't know if it's like deeply irresponsible. I don't know if people just don't understand that this is what a lot of these groups are participating in, and a lot of these groups are just basically like moving in that direction. I don't know. I've thought about that a lot, and I think they genuinely wish and prefer anti-Semitic pushback towards Israel as it justifies their worldview. Yes, exactly. They hate people like you the most because you pull their movement down in a way that makes sense. I know. If you're otherwise progressive, if you're progressive except for Palestine, you hear someone like myself, you're going to get a little one-shotted, okay? You're going to be like, wait a minute, I trust this guy on everything else. Let me hear him out here. Okay? As I've jokingly said over and over again, even though it's not really a joke, I'm the one who makes Jonathan Greenblatt's nieces and nephews say fuck Israel. Nick Fuentes is never going to get Jonathan Greenblatt's nieces and nephews to say fuck Israel because Nick Fuentes is an anti-Semite. So he sees that, and that fucking terrifies him. It's the same principle behind Bill A. Packman, Bill Smokes Crackman, whose daughter went to fucking Harvard and became like an anti-Zionist socialist, And that cracked his brain. Yeah, Bill Smokes Crackman. That's it. It's good we're having constructive debates on the U.S.-Israeli relationship because I, too, have grown disillusioned with the ability of the aircraft carrier theory to explain everything as succinctly as I may have believed it in the past. What I have come to believe is that the ideological motivations among certain elected U.S. officials play a larger role in driving support for Israel than purely strategic and geopolitical considerations, to the point where ideological commitment often trumps material benefit. It's not the Cold War anymore. Many Gulf monarchies have entirely lost their will to pose an obstacle to Israel or U.S. power projection. The U.S. now has a plethora of compliant client states to choose from beyond Israel, clients that they benefit greatly from in many different ways. I'd be interested to hear other perspectives and thoughts. That's why I say it's a chicken or the egg situation. Okay? That's why I say it's a chicken or the egg situation where it's like, yes, it is the actual the starting point for this alliance is settler colonialism. That's it, right? It's a carryover from British settler colonial occupation to an exchange into American hands post World War II, Cold War, important ally in that regard, especially when pan-Arabic nationalism is heating up. So, but in that process, Israel's been able to do a lot of both espionage and also a lot of influence peddling in the United States of America and become seemingly irreplaceable, even though they are very replaceable. But good luck explaining that to anyone over the age of fucking 50. They don't understand it as a consequence of both the lobby and also all of these other institutions. It is an incredibly, immensely sophisticated propaganda operation. And it's been profoundly successful pre-democratization of the media with social media. That's it. That's why you literally brick people's brains when they see the fucking violence that Israel is engaging in, or and the arrogance from Israeli envoys in mainstream outlets where that doesn't match up with the reality that you're seeing on social media. That's it. There's some truth to this. There's still a lot of material considerations, but support for Israel is so deeply ingrained in U.S. institutions, basically a part of the civic religion. Just like you have to support the concept of equality or social security, you have to support Israel. The anti-Israel stuff genuinely makes no sense to them. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's not even a question. Talk to anybody. That's why, going back to the conversation I had with Matt Does, like, a person like that is seen as a fucking outside radical in these circles. Okay? Like, even a person who has played a role initially in, like, advocating on that the Hamas is responsible for barbarism and violence, and it's a right-wing nationalist project, and it's really fucked up. It's like they're the real Nazis, whatever. All the shit that he said early on. And he's Baptist, by the way, I think, right? I think he said it. I mean, Matt Does is a Christian. Where did he get this indoctrination? I mean, he briefly alluded to his own personal indoctrination into Christian Zionism in that conversation that we had, right? But these guys they look at this as like an unconditional force, an unconditional loyalty. Many Americans do. And it has nothing to do with fucking Jews or Judaism either. Like, yes, this doesn't mean that like Zionism has not basically turned into a national religion for a lot of Jews, and that is by design. That has been a deliberate mechanism for a lot of secular Jews who don't really care about like the religious stuff, but get a sense of community, and it's a formative part of their development. Many of you are in here. You know this. You've reflected on this. You've talked about this actively, right? But like Jews ultimately are a tiny fraction of the American population. And before people say, oh, well, they are overrepresented in media or in positions of power, it doesn't matter. You know who else is fucking hyper represented in those positions? WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, evangelical Protestant Zionists. Okay. And guess what? They are literally not only all over the fucking claw, they have a claw grip on the levers of power, but also are deeply invested in the continuation of this allegiance with Israel. That's why I always fucking say that it doesn't matter. Even if every Jew in America turned around and was like, fucking Israel sucks, we don't want anything to do with this, we're washing our hands of this, okay? American foreign policy would not change on the matter. Do you see what I mean? That's it. I went to a Baptist church in high school. They were definitely brainwashing us into Zionism. It was insane. Yeah. Yeah. What would lawmakers say to all of them then? Look at the Pope. The Pope is pro-Palestine. Nobody gives a fuck. Yeah, that's George Stephanopoulos' actual sister, too. Yeah. It's a very uniquely American thing. Growing up Catholic and in the DR, I don't remember hearing about Israel in any capacity to the point that I was under the impression they were like a Bible thing until I learned about the Holocaust in the States. Yeah, because the DR has no use for Israel. That's the reason. America does. Did you guys know that Justin Amash is literally Christian Palestinian? Did you know that? Rashida Tlaib is not the only Palestinian congressperson. Justin Amash is a Christian Palestinian congressperson, or was a Christian Palestinian congressperson. He's a Republican, a libertarian. Did you know that? Has that made a difference? No. It don't matter. Yeah, the DR is not on the Security Council. Exactly. Yeah, Justin Amash's family was murdered by Israel when they struck a church that they were sheltering, like near a church they were sheltering at. So, as is the case, I've said to you before, my analysis on the situation is it's both. If you have on the one side the Noam Chomsky analysis, which is like the unsinkable aircraft carrier analysis to show Israel's importance, and then on the other side you have the fucking on the other side you have the Mersheimer perspective, which is the lobby and its pervasive influence on American politics. I say it's both. I say both play a formative role. But one could not exist without the other.
Questions on the words that one uses are at the heart of what I hear many people asking about this war, including Jews, which is how can they support Zionism if this is the current manifestation of Zionism?
Well, look, it's like, how can you support Islam if Ayatollah Khomeini is the progenitor of it? How can you support Christianity if the Crusades happened? How can you support America?
Yeah, the difference is, okay, people don't do that. No one is associating Saudi Arabia with the entirety of Islam. No one is associating Iran with the entirety of Islam. What the fuck do you mean? Your job is literally, by definition, associating Israel with the entirety of Judaism. So either you're making an argument that, like, they get to do stuff, so why can't we? Or I don't know what the argument would be, actually. That's just the only conclusion here is that you, as a person who does associate Israel with Judaism, because your entire job is to defend Israel by claiming that any critic of Israel is actually doing this because of deep anti-Semitic opinions, you're literally... you're just saying, like, they get to do it, why can't we? Christians did chattel slavery, why can't the Jews have a little bit of a genocide? Come on now. That's deeply anti-Semitic. You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater argument if your position is literally to tie Israel to Judaism, which is your position. So which one is it? Okay, this is a failure of whataboutism because you're the one who's tying Israel to Judaism. So either you just said your entire fucking position is fraudulent and you have been an anti-Semitic person this entire time by making this false conflation between Judaism and Zionism, by making this false conflation between Israel and all Jews, or you're just saying, why can't Jews have a little bit of genocide? Come on now. Like, let me have a little bit of that. Let me get a little piece of the action here.
America, if you disagree with President Trump's policies, or even in the face of larger scale disasters like slavery. Like, so again, Zionism is the right of a people to self-determination. You can be upset with the policies of a government. But again, if you didn't say in the wake of enslavement of Africans, America should be destroyed. If you didn't say in the wake of the Crusades, Christianity has no legitimacy.
Dog, the funny thing is, conservatives, and by the way, this is right-wing reactionary propaganda for the record. I see this as no different than like a fucking neo-Nazi being like, why are you attacking white people? Why do you hate Christianity? What he's literally fucking arguing here is exactly the same shit. No, that's what people always say. People that want to bring back chattel slavery or reinstate the racial hierarchies and continue the racial domination of black people, people who are white supremacists do say that. And you are a supremacist of a different variety. You are an ethno-religious supremacist. You advocate for Jewish supremacy. You advocate for Jewish domination over the Palestinians. So you turn around and do the exact same argument. White supremacists say the exact same shit that Jonathan Greenblatt is saying. They just say it for Christian nationalism, white people broadly, white men. They have a different seasoning associated with it. And most people don't understand because like Jews in the Western world have historically been a marginalized population with pogroms and also the Holocaust, that a lot of Americans who want to be progressive cannot comprehend that like in Israel over there, Jews are the dominant in-group. They are the white people of Israel, the quote unquote white people of Israel. They don't have to look white. I just mean white as a socio-political construct of who has the power, who is the in-group. You say Jews control the media in America, you're anti-Semitic. You say Jews control the media in Israel, you're just reflecting on the reality. Okay? Do you understand? I mean, this is a humorous way to describe it, but that's the major difference. You put a fucking Star of David on the side of a fucking apartment complex to mark that a Jewish person is living there in the Western world. That might mean you're about to do a hate crime, an anti-Semitic hate crime. But in Israel, settlers mark Palestinian houses with the Star of David, and that is an indication of a hate crime of a different sort that is about to take place. They are going to light that house up. They are going to push those Palestinians out of that home. They are going to engage in a pogrom. That's the difference between the power dynamic. And of course, I would take it one step further and even say that in the Western world, the only reason why this is the one specific group that has some kind of like real systemic power in quote unquote canceling people and deplatforming people is because of its ties to American foreign policy. Because anti-Semitism is used successfully, or at least was used successfully, as a mechanism of deflection and a shield for Israel. That is the only reason. That is the only reason, because Americans don't give a fuck about any of this shit. They don't. They broadly do not care. So if you're always wondering, like, why is it that this is the one marginalized group in the United States of America that people seemingly do care about, okay, or that institutions do actually move in the direction of, and will go through a tedious list of dog whistles to figure out whether or not someone is being anti-Semitic, and then like end up deplatforming them or whatever. At least they did. Okay. That is the reason, because it is used as a primary vehicle to defend Israel. It's a primary vehicle to stop conversations from taking place about Israel in the United States of America. Okay? That's it. That's it. And of course, part of the process is that, and this is something that I also talk about quite frequently, but like, there is no comparison between the systematic discrimination that still exists against Muslims in this country, that still exists against black people in this country, that still exists broadly against brown people in this country, versus systemic discrimination against Jews in this country. Jews can still very much be victim to anti-Semitic hate crimes. But as far as like some sort of systemic disenfranchisement, it does not happen. That it used to. But in contemporary American society, that does not happen. Okay? This doesn't mean that anti-Semitism is not a hateful bigotry. It is. But disenfranchisement of Jews broadly by the systems is like disenfranchisement of Slavs broadly by the systems. It happened in the past. It doesn't happen any longer. Of course, the systematic disenfranchisement of Jews was far more consequential given that the Holocaust happened. But once again, remember, it's just, it's not the same as different forms of bigotry, and the defense mechanism that exists only exists because it is used as a weapon to defend Israel in American discourse. American citizens are getting rounded up based on color of their skin and what language they're talking as we speak for deportation. Exactly.
If you don't say in the wake of the oppression of women for centuries, Islam has no right, then why would you feel differently about this? Again,
I'm only trying to
the
carry.
Jewish state.
I'm trying to.
Yeah, why do you care so much about the Jewish state? Why do you care so much about the Jewish state? It's a terrible argument. Anyone looking for purely materialist and realpolitik reasoning to explain the USA-Israel relationship will come away frustrated. Number one, this is David Grossman. I think the best place to start understanding that relationship is through looking at the first Western imperial power to control Palestine, England. A Christmas gift for the British people says so much. 100 years before President Donald Trump recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital, British Prime Minister David Lloyd George proclaimed that the city would be a Christmas gift for the British people. Using Jerusalem as a means to impress the public, the Prime Minister insisted that a symbolic victory in Palestine would bolster morale as they fought battles on the Western Front. And in June 1917, with his sights set on defeating the Ottoman Empire, Lord George appointed General Edmund Allenby as the High Commissioner of Egypt and gave him one of the most consequential orders in modern Middle East history, to capture Jerusalem by Christmas. Christmas gift, of course, implies the religious appeal of control, but also that Palestine is a reward, likely for the high cost of World War I. Capturing Jerusalem by Christmas vaguely points towards Crusaders, the idea of a reachable and controllable past in a real physical place. Looking at the American relationship, you find something similar, placing onto Israel qualities that feel generically American: courage, tenacity, being the underdog. The quote from Nixon in 1974 is the first American president to visit. Upon his arrival in Israel, Nixon said in a 15-minute ceremony at Ben Gurion Airport, "I can only say that the friendship that we have for this nation, the respect, the admiration we have for the people of this nation, their courage, their tenacity, their firmness in the face of very great odds, is one that makes us proud to stand with Israel, as we have in the past in times of trouble." Israel has been able to successfully market itself as like an American commodity, an American partner, or rather an extension of America to American society broadly. Israel has also, as Theodore Herzl, the founding father of Zionism, chose to try and market Israel as a settler colonial project to different subsects of Jews that were ideologically and theologically against the creation of the Israeli nation state for Jews. He went to different groups and advocated differently, okay? He marketed it. Israel does the same still to this day. You go to evangelical Christian circles, and you got guys like Gilad Erdan, former UN envoy, former UN ambassador to Israel, visiting Pastor John Hagee's church only a couple months after October 7, 2023, to talk to them about how you're on the side of the good here. You're actually going to basically bring back the rapture. You think anyone in Israel fucking legitimately believes that? Maybe some of the fucking Messianic Jews, but like they don't. That's not, Gilad Erdan doesn't believe that the fucking rapture is going to happen. Okay? Theodore Herzl, founding father of Zionism, was secular. Why did he want Israel to be implemented in the biblical Israel, the biblical land for the Jews? Because he thought he could bring a lot of religious Jews on board doing that. The initial attempts were either to build it in Uganda. Some people even floated the idea of Argentina as well. Why did they build it? Where they built it? Marketing. As noted perfectly in High Noon, Jews in the Cinematic Wild West, How the West Was Made. In 1958, Manischewitz Company released a 6-minute Passover record created by Harold Stern. A real honest-to-goodness Jewish cowboy from Central Texas, anticipating giggles and incredulity from his urban Jewish listeners, Stern remarks, "Frankly, there's nothing so unusual about being a Jewish cowboy. It was a history lesson pressed onto a novelty record." Alternating between Stern's folksy monologue and musical interludes by Israeli singer/accordionist Avram Grobert. The mashup was hardly accidental. Israeli mythmakers and filmmakers recognized American Westerns as a useful symbol for their own Zionist project, reimagining the cowboy as a chalutz, pioneer, or sabra, native-born. The Western town is an agricultural community, moshav, or kibbutz, rifles as machine guns, denim jeans as khaki pants, Stetsons as temple hats, boots as sandals, and Native Americans as Arabs. The album jacket bio touts Stern's combination of the physical skills and mental aptitude, an image in line with Israel's new Jew. Israel as a new frontier in line with the American conquest of native peoples was quickly understood by those wanting to make the new country appeal to America. As Ilan Pappé notes, in The Idea of Israel, early Israeli cinema often looked directly to the Western. And remember, Jabotinsky and Herzl at different times has openly revealed that Israel was a colonial project. The early Zionist movement did not actually mince words on the colonial aspect of this. Okay? You have to remember, the idea that the progressive forces defend Israel is a relatively new phenomena in the grand scheme of things. Okay, it's a relatively new phenomena. People were just like, yeah, no, this is a colonialism. This is a settler colonial operation. Okay, Zionism is a settler colonial operation. We know it. We don't mince our words. We just say it as it is. Okay. Yeah, just as Manifest Destiny, just as Lebensraum, Greater Israel as a project is colonial in its ambitions. You're saying that an imperialist ethno-supremacist Nazi state got inspired by the U.S.? Yeah, not the first one. Yeah, I'm saying that. And I'm also saying not the first one. The OG, the one that we all know is bad, the German version of this, also was inspired by the United States of America, as you guys know, if you are students of history. You know? Not the first one at all. Let's be fair, though. Hitler thought the American one-drop rule was too severe to apply in Germany for Jews. That's true. It's also much more difficult to apply the one-drop rule in that situation because, like, you know, Ashkenazi Jews are white. I think that's more of it's just like difficult to implement. For those of you who don't know, one-drop rule is at the heart of white supremacy. The notion that even if you have a single drop of the blood of a black person, you are still black. Cinema added its own dimension to the myth of annihilation and associated the Nazi ideology of human extermination with Arab intentions in 1948, as we can see in films such as Hill 24, They Were 10, and, of course, Exodus. An especially blunt version is to be found in the feature film Amut Chaesh, Pillar of Fire, in 1959, not to be confused with the television series discussed later on with a similar name. It is the story of a small southern kibbutz locked in a desperate fight against Egyptian tanks. The American Jewish director Larry Frisch staged the film as a classical Western where the cowboys have to fight the savage Indians, who do not appear in the film but are implicitly presented as targets whenever the brave Zionist soldiers shoot someone in the dark. In one scene, there are obscure images in the distance that seem to be dangerous Arabs. Zionism, as an expansion of the colonial imagination, was, of course, first noted by Jabotinsky in The Iron Wall, who I was talking about, the other founding father, I guess, aside from Theodore Herzl, which lavishes praise on the Pilgrim Fathers. The native populations, civilized or uncivilized, have always stubbornly resisted the colonialists, irrespective of whether they were civilized or savage. And it made no difference whatever whether the colonists behaved decently or not. The companions of Cortez and Pizarro, or, as some people will remind us, our own ancestors under Joshua ben Nun, behaved like brigands. But the Pilgrim Fathers, the real first pioneers of North America, were people of the highest morality who did not want to do harm to anyone, least of all to the Red Indians. And they honestly believed that there was room enough in the prairies for both the paleface and the redskin. Yet the native population fought with the same ferocity against the good colonists as against the bad. Every native population, civilized or not, regards this land as its national home, of which it is the sole master. And it wants to retain that mastery Always, it will refuse to admit not only new masters, but even new partners or collaborators. Imperialist powers saw within Palestine and Zionism a reflection of their own national mythos. They were right in a lot of ways, especially considering the tendency for these myths to cover up genocide. That's it. Overzealous released a new video about what you're talking about. How to destroy every Zionist talking point from Overzealous 2 hours ago. What a fucking fantastic video to start with. Respond to Squirrel. What makes you think I don't fucking talk to Squirrel already or have talked to Squirrel already? Remember what I said earlier when I will be covering something that's going on that pertains to Israel Palestine, and people will come in and like try to fucking farm drama? Like, I'll give you a great example of one of the things that Scroll was like posting, where it's like, why won't Hassan have, you know, Aaron Mate on? Why won't Hassan have Ali Abu, I don't want to say his last name wrong, Electronic Intifada's own Ali Abu Nime on? Not knowing that I talked to both Aaron Monte and also Ali as well, and was planning on linking up with them in Chicago. We just didn't have enough time. Ali Abu Nima. Okay. And I'm going to still have him on the broadcast, hopefully, when I go to the Palestine People's Conference at the end of this month in Michigan. So a lot of people just like get mad about certain things because they just don't know the entire, they don't know what's going on behind the scenes, for example. One of the funniest things that people fucking criticize me over is whenever people say, Hassan, why don't you have any Palestinians on? It's like, bro, I've had more fucking Palestinians from Gaza who are directly still in Gaza. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? The fuck are you talking about? People will be like, oh, Hassan only has liberal Zionists on. Excuse me. How do you deal with people that just lack object permanence when it comes to just, I don't know, any number of different things that are happening in the world? You can't. So stop fucking focusing on the noise. And if you see someone saying shit like that that's just like patently incorrect, you can correct them. That's it. All right. I love you, but you're complaining too much about people complaining about you. See, this is the other side of the fucking equation. I think that's a fair assessment. I'm still going to fucking give you an hour off because you're not seeing the amount of people that we're fucking banning already in the chat, and the amount of people that have come in to be fucking nuisances, even though I have already described, I've already told you what my position is.
To you by Ground News. Disclaimer. This video deals with sensitive and contentious topics, one of which is race. Scientific consensus affirms that race is a social construct with no real biological basis. The usage of the term race throughout this video has nothing to do with biology or science in any meaningful sense. Race is a human invention created to impose arbitrary hierarchical distinctions between people. distinctions with very real consequences. And as this video progresses, we will see how many different supremacist ideologies, from Zionism to Nazism, flirt with such a construction to serve their specific goals. Plenty of nationalist projects rely on grand nation-building narratives and myths, and when it comes to the state of Israel,
Shouts out the overzealots for this video, debunking every Zionist talking point, destroying every Zionist talking point. We're going to go through. This is a long video, but I think it's a very good one. I'm going to go pee real quick.
Those narratives are abundant. Israel derives much of its sense of legitimacy from ahistorical fables, some informed by religious texts, others crafted as post hoc justifications for the fascistic aspirations of the Zionist project. Ultimately, these nation-building narratives serve to oppress and subjugate the Palestinian people while offering a veneer of legitimacy to the settler colonial state of Israel. This video is meant to be a kind of guide for dealing with Israeli propaganda. I'll go over every major Zionist talking point and offer a rebuttal. I recommend watching it all the way through the first time and then using the timestamps in the description if you ever want to revisit specific sections. This will be part 1 of a 2-part series. In this episode, I'll be tackling the historical narrative surrounding the state of Israel, its formation, the biblical and ancient myths it leans on, and more. The next episode will focus on more contemporary Zionist propaganda. It's important when dealing with this topic, or any topic for that matter, we not only take into account the mainstream narrative that's constantly shoved in our faces, but we do the proper research and try to understand the entire picture. Challenging our blind spots is how we arrive at a genuine understanding, and the sponsor of today's video can help with that. I use Ground News to get a feel for how a story is being covered across the political spectrum, which outlets are in the forefront and which ones choose to engage in omission. For example, if we take a look at this article titled, "Amnesty International says Israel and aid system use starvation to commit Gaza genocide," the majority of the coverage is by left-leaning media outlets, with only a few right-wing outlets picking up the story. Ground News' bias comparison tool is another feature I find helpful. With just a click of a button, we can get an overview and learn that left-leaning outlets frame Israel's actions as a deliberate genocidal campaign, while right-leaning outlets emphasize Israel's rebuttals and undermine claims of Israeli intent. This can be further illustrated by comparing the way the headlines are written in the leftmost outlets with the way they're written in the center or the rightmost outlets. The Intercept, the furthest left outlet to present this story, used more accusatory and charged language than its center or right-wing counterparts. Ground News also makes it easy to see who owns and funds the publications in question, as well as their factuality. So subscribe to get 40% off the Unlimited Advantage plan by using my link, groundnews.com/over, or by clicking the link below. Now let's get back to the video. Land for a people without land. This talking point is fairly straightforward. The idea is that Jews had nowhere to go and the land of Palestine was nothing more than a barren desert waiting for their arrival.
When many Jewish people returned...
It's funny because I feel like he's just condensing 10 myths into a 1 hour and 31-minute video and expanding on it as well. This is why it's like a fairly solid starting point. 10 myths by Elon Pape is a really good starting point to this conversation for a lot of people.
to the promised land in the 1800s, the land was dry and barren. But just like the Bible says, Israelis have found unique ways to make the desert bloom and prosper.
In actuality, Palestine had a thriving society well before the arrival of Zionist settlers. A notable region was that of Jabal Nablus during the 18th and 19th century Ottoman rule. Nablus, the legendary city within the region of Jabal Nablus, was more than just some important interior city, but it was the heart for regional trade and local manufacturing. It was the most important of the interior cities in terms of continuous settlement, density of population, economic activity, leadership role, and degree of autonomy within Ottoman rule, wrote Palestinian-American academic Bishara Doumani. He goes on to point out how features usually associated with so-called modernization, such as commercial agriculture, a money economy in the rural...
The Boers say this about the Cape too? Yes, and white supremacists still say this about Zimbabwe. They say, oh, Rhodesia had technological proficiency, but then when it fell to the hands of dangerous Africans, which is, you know, the indigenous population, of course, you know, they claim that the real problem was not the real problem was not necessarily the fucking... See, this is what I mean. Look. Yeah, they still say that about South Africa. They say it about India too. But the real problem is of course, not like crippling sanctions or a revenge campaign, pretty much, but instead is actually simply because black people are inferior. Like, it's a relitigation of white supremacist propaganda.
Areas, differentiation within the peasantry, commoditization of land, and ties to the world market were present in Jabal Nablus before they were supposedly introduced by the Egyptian occupation, the Ottoman Tanzimat, or Jewish colonization. Palestine even had its own legendary rulers like Zahir al-Umar, as well as its own unique political complexities and strategic alliances. By the 19th century, Palestine was even starting to develop its own nationalism and secularization movements, in which people from all backgrounds could unite in their shared territory, language, and history. But this cultural momentum was unfortunately halted and uprooted by the Zionist movement. Palestinians also had their own unique cultural understanding of and relationship with the land, and notably, the city of Jerusalem. It was more than just a holy site for them, but an administrative center, an education hub, home to important newspapers, clubs, and more. And Jerusalem was far from the sole city of importance in Palestine. Historian Rashid Khalidi points out how the cities of Jaffa and Haifa were beginning to grow rapidly prior to the First World War. Increased trade with Europe, the building of new railways for which these ports were terminals, and the consequent stimulation of economic activity in their immediate hinterland all contributed to their growth and
burn the Saudi flag. It represents Islam. Or even one step further, you can't burn the ISIS flag. It represents Islam type beat. Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah. Thank God we're protecting the real flag in the United States of America. So that's one aspect of this. The other aspect of this that I was going to talk about with respect to like anti-Semitic conspiracies intensifying, outside of just like how susceptible Americans are to this. It's probably a cry for help. It's probably a way to try and get attention from his father. It's really, really sad. He said it's because you and his dad kicked him out of your Discord. He's obviously isolated and it's kind of sad. He was in my Discord? Why the fuck was he in my Discord? Yeah, we don't let anybody under the age of 18 of the fucking Discord. What is it? What kind of stupid shit is this? Yeah. What the fuck? He mentioned me? He knows who I am? That is crazy. I guess his dad is psychotically obsessed with everything that I do, so but yeah, my point is this is another prominent example. This is another primary example of like when you actively design your worldview, as many people have, around attacking the left, attacking socialism, attacking communism, you end up pushing people who are in the periphery to seek out answers, and conspiratorial thinking works within the confines of liberalism so perfectly. And there's the grand conspiracy almost always, the grandest of all conspiracies almost always is Jews. Jews are the ones who are responsible for everything that's going on in society. That's why Nazi sentiment is so successful. Liberalism plays a formative role in Nazism continuing to grow as a movement. It is not an accident that after World War II, and I guess the historic battle between communism, the historic battle between communism and capitalism, socialism and capitalism, led to the destruction of socialist movements of the Western world and the end of the USSR, and inevitably created an environment post 80s, 90s, where left unchecked, capitalism created or accelerated the contradictions that is now collapsing the system that we have designed. And fascism is thriving once again. And that's where we're at. It'll take some time, I think, for people to recognize that the solution to growing fascist movements is not liberalism, but instead anti-fascism. So, Gorbachev and Pizza Hut, yeah, I mean, he fucking, a lot of the USSR leadership got one-shotted from the bounties of unlimited commodities that they saw, where they were like, this is the greatest. I love treats, which is why I've been an advocate for treat economy, and have long stated that I have no issue with luxury commodities or treats necessarily. I think it's an important tool to keep people satisfied. Anyway, I was raised alt-right and conservative. You've been a big part of my education and transformation to the correct side of history. I know it's discouraging, but keep going. You're making a difference. Yeah. Where was I? We're going to talk about the Trump summit, the suckmit, and what the goals were, what the intentions were, and who actually won and who lost big in the process, and what this says about where we're at. Yeah. So, the loudest and most powerful voices in this community are not in Twitch chat. They're outside of protests at the DSA convention, advocating for PSL, working for Zora and other campaigns. Yeah, exactly. They're labor organizers. They're people that work in the movement. They're not people chirping on Twitter. I think people chirping on Twitter, people chirping in the Discord. Let's be real. If you're doing that, then you're not busying yourself enough with real work. And that's it. But it also doesn't matter. Again, because this kind of back and forth will always happen. There will always be people that yell. There'll always be people that get mad. It is what it is. But like I said, I think because the left is utterly powerless in this country, I see no reason to endlessly go back and forth on the minutia. You know? Just continue to be charitable, I guess.